This weekly radio program with the people of St. Kitts NEVIS have the opportunity to interact with their government. The Team Unity government is for the people and by the people. I am Jamiela McPhail, sitting in for Lesroy Williams, who is on assignment. Today, we are honored to have the Minister of Justice, Legal Affairs and Communications, the Honorable Attorney General, Vincent Byron. Good afternoon, Mr. Byron. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Jeannie, and thank you very much for having me. And I must say good afternoon to all those in Radio Land and those who will be listening in wherever they are in the diaspora. By stream, I think this has been streamed, and we welcome the opportunity to be able to speak to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis about what our goals are, what we hope to achieve within the framework of our government and national unity, and to report on what we have accomplished in the 9 or so months that we have actually been in office. It has been a very exciting time. We feel very heartened by what we have achieved. I think we have been working exceedingly hard, and we know that we have touched the lives of many people, and we hope that that ultimately will be what we expect to accomplish that. And as your program so aptly says, we are working for you. Yes, thank you for having me this afternoon.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you. And before we get started, as I did last week, I want to issue congratulations again.
Yes.
Congratulations to the Team Unity government on the great news of the poll conducted by well-renowned pollster, Mr. Don Anderson, which shows that the Prime Minister Harris-led Team Unity government has the overwhelming support of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. In fact, those poll results indicates that over 2/3 of the people in St. Kitts and Nevis support the government of national unity. So congratulations.
Thank you very much for that. And really, I think the people who have shown confidence and believe in what we have done, that needs to be congratulated, and we thank them that they recognize that we have been working very hard on their behalf, and that they have shown agreement with what we have been accomplishing. We pledge to continue to work even harder and to accomplish even more on behalf of the people. And I think this afternoon I can share a little bit of what we have been doing under the various portfolios that I have conducted, and I hope that we can have a good afternoon in terms of laying out what has been done, what we have in store for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis as we go forward. And again, thank you again, because the poll results really speak to what we would want for St. Kitts and Nevis. You recall, Jamie, that the Team Unity has had a long period in which we came together and we put together, as it was, a movement of people in St. Kitts that needed something different from what had pertained prior to that. I for one can point to December 2012 as the birth, the initial start of this movement as we came together. Some will point earlier to the fallout that happened after the land for debt swap in 2012, September. But in December of 2012, the members of the opposition at the time, there were 5 of us on the opposition benches, filed a motion of no confidence with the clerk of the National Assembly, December 2012. And then ensued a program, a campaign for 26 months that more or less fashioned the philosophical basis, the ethos of what team unity really meant, what it really means, and what guides us, the principles that guides us as we go forward. And it came out of the fact that the government of the day, the Douglas administration, had failed the people in terms of upholding the Constitution. And there were a number of constitutional battles, a number of battles that we took to the court. We didn't take to the streets. We did what is expected of a responsible opposition, what is expected a responsible group of men and women who want to deliver for our country something that is better than what went before. We railed against not just the motion of no confidence. We went against the senator's bill that tried to circumvent the Constitution that was struck down in the courts, and of course the long protracted struggle to maintain that we did not have any sort of boundary changes that were unconstitutional, that did not work for the betterment of justice in this country. And so our campaign was based on a very simple mantra: restoring democracy and a prosperity agenda for the people. And what do those two things basically mean? Restoring a democracy meant that a government of national unity will be working to establish good governance in this country. Good governance. And so for us, a good governance agenda means that we structuring some very fundamental laws in this country, changing them and introducing them over the term of our office. And I'm happy to say that already we have begun to lay out that good governance agenda as has been set out in our manifesto. We have had the introduction of freedom of information legislation and the companion bill that goes with it, protection of information, the privacy bill. We have introduced a bill for term limits of the Prime Minister, and we will soon be also revisiting the question of integrity in public life. And so those will be the initial bills that will give, as it was, the people of St. Kitts and Nevis the foundation, the fundamental basis by which those who are in public life, those who hold public office, can be accountable to the people at every day, not just in terms of a general election poll, not just at a general election time, but these bills that have been tabled in the House have had a first reading. We are now circulating to the general public. We expect to have a program of consultation that people understand fully what they entail, what they mean, and so that we can have, as it was, the general public engaged and understand what we want to do. So good governance is going to be a primary function in terms of the laws. It also will mean things, well, a very important factor, that we will look at the Constitution and we will be embarking on constitutional reform that would have at the center of that electoral reform, the changing of the various electoral processes that we do, and so forth. The second limb of the team unity agenda was the question of a prosperity agenda for all, fair share, fresh start for people, young people, middle-aged people, that we can have a country in which that we create a level playing field for people to embark and follow their own self-interests, to be able to make a proper living for themselves and their children, that there's hope, there's expectation, there are opportunities in all spheres of life for the people of St. Kitts and Nevis. And this we will be doing through various legislation, through various government programs, but it is for the people to be able to explore what is available to them in the country of their birth. And we are very excited about the opportunities that we look forward to be able to roll out for individuals. There's one other thing I'd want to mention that I think is reflective in the poll, and that has to do with the basic, I don't want to say philosophy, but ethos in which we have been conducting the government of this country over the last 9 months. And it has really to do with, I could remember during the campaign, Prime Minister Harris using the term, we are taking the high road, and where we expect that every citizen of this country, regardless of what political background you come from, whatever party affiliation, that should have an equal opportunity in our country. I know there are a number of supporters of unity who would like to see a different approach, and there are those who feel that many people in the Labour had it all their way. But for us, and I've been on record before on the radio to say that we have members in our unity government who come from different backgrounds. Those who have supported Labour, those who have supported the People's Action Movement, and the CCM, and that with the various members from different backgrounds, each should be protecting their supporters. So if you're a Labour, the idea is that they would not be in any way disadvantaged because there is no longer a Labour administration. Similarly, those who are PAM should have opportunities that they never had before. And it would be one in which we expect, regardless of your political affiliation, to be able to benefit from our government of national unity. It's about unity. All of us in the thing together. And if we work together as a team, as a people, I think the country will go from strength to strength. And so it's a very exciting time for the country, for all of us, as we work to make St. Kitts the best place to live, to work, to have fun, and play. Thank you.
Fantastic. Now, Minister, it has become a tradition for this program to ask each minister, including the Prime Minister, how have the first 9 months, as you said, been in office for them. So this afternoon I ask you, how have these months been for you, and what has been your focus during this period?
Boy, it has been an exciting time, I must tell you. It has been exceptionally hard work. I think no one can really understand the sort of hours and the sort of work that a minister of government would normally have to do. I have a number of portfolios in which maybe it might be best for me to explain what I cover and what we do, and then maybe we can then go on to say some special projects that we have. As Attorney General, my responsibility is to give advice to the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. I have chambers, a number of lawyers who work with me and who would advise me to advise the government, and we have consultation among the lawyers. And I have access to other counsel as well. So it's very important to understand that when I say advice to the government, whether you are Public Works or the Ministry of Health or in any department of government, the Attorney General's chambers gets every day a lot of requests for advice, for what to explain the law and that type of stuff. So we do a lot of work, writing opinions on various matters. We look at contracts and agreements that various ministries may have with contractors, providers of services to the government. We vet these things. So there is a whole body of work that is done at the Attorney General's chambers. We also, as Attorney General, I am the official person who is sued when somebody needs to sue the government, and so on. So the office that's happened. And similarly, when the government needs to sue somebody, the Attorney General will sue. The Office of the Attorney General does that suit. So we are responsible for litigation in the court in defending the government in constitutional civil matters and so on. I should also point out that there is a particular department that falls under my purview, the Director of Public Prosecutions,
The DPP.
the DPP, who has responsibility, constitutional responsibility, for taking criminal action against anybody. So that if, for instance, there is a suit against somebody for a crime, it is the DPP who will determine whether there is criminal action to be had, and he has the constitutional responsibility for doing so. The Attorney General cannot advise him, cannot instruct him. It is left to him constitutionally for me not to interfere in the work that he does. And so that also, but the Office of the Attorney General would have some administrative responsibility in terms of staffing and those type of things to be able to support the work of the DPP. I'm also, and of course, at some point I'll come back later and talk about some of what has happened this year in relation to the DPP's office.
Yes.
I'm also Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, and that portfolio gives me responsibility for the administrative support to our courts, so that the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, that's here, a separate branch of government, yes, but in terms of the administrative support, again, staffing, financing all the stuff, and the operations of the court, we would have responsibility for that in my ministry, as well as the magistrates court, for that the conduct of these things is very important, that we keep the courts running. It's a very critical aspect of our government, of the society, that the courts function properly, so that we have that responsibility. The question of titles and deeds and so forth that the court office does, those all have to be dealt with properly for us to have a proper functioning society. In addition to that, as Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs, we are responsible for the Office of Intellectual Property. It's an area where we see is going to be growing, and one we would want to place some focus on, because intellectual property, for the most part, has been focusing on the filing of trademarks. People have different products that come in, and so you need to get a license and you file these trademarks from products from all the world. But intellectual property also has to do with the production of works, intellectual property, whether it be in songs, music, literature, books, and so on. But the registering of these to protect, as it was, the work that is done. And it's an area that we feel should be a growth area for our young people and those who use their talents to create music and do so, and that we can find ways in which they can benefit to make a livelihood, profitable livelihood, from having this Office of Intellectual Property. So that's also one of my responsibilities. There's the Office of the Ombudsman, which has a certain independence to it, that acts as an office where people can have complaints against government departments to be dealt with. And we also have, at this point in time, for the first time, the Office of Elections, the Electoral Office, now comes under the Office of the Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs. I have one other portfolio, and that is communications. Communications here has more to do with the Commission of Information and Computer Technology. As well, I should point out, the regulatory body, the NTRC, the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, also has responsibility. I have responsibility for that as a minister to implement the regulations that are done by the NTRC. We have under the Ministry of Communication the Department of Technology, which we are in the process of rebranding and renaming and reorganizing the Office of Information and Computer Technology as we go forward. And that for me is perhaps a very, very exciting field that we would also want to speak about. I should mention in passing as well that under that we would have responsibility minister for the statute, well, the private company, which the government has a majority shareholder in the cable communications, would fall under the ministerial support. So there are a number of areas that we have had, and during this 9 months, we have taken time to understand what we have to do in each of these. We have got to know the staff, got to know the issues that are confronting them. There are a number of things that needed to be done to set a roadmap going forward. Some things need to be improved on. Some things had fallen off the thing, and we need to get them back on track. And it has been an exciting time trying to understand and to map the way forward. And we have done quite a bit, and we are doing quite a bit. And of course we'll talk about them as we go forward. Yes. But it has been a great 9 months, exciting, a lot of hard work, sleepless nights, but enjoyable nonetheless.
So, well, you mentioned that you're working on a number of projects. Now, I know one important project, if you will, is the Criminal Justice Strategic Board.
Yes.
Now, crime is a high priority of the government of national unity, and I know that the government has done many things to combat crime in the Federation. So tell us a little bit about the Criminal Justice Strategic Board. What is it and how it will aid in that fight against crime?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised that. As you mentioned, one of our real serious problems in St. Kitts and Nevis in the fight against crime, and violent crime in particular. The statistics that are produced by the police show that reported crime generally has been coming more and more under control, but in terms of violent crime, gun crime, these are still out of control. And we have to take this, we have to deal with it as properly as we can. It is a matter for the police to come up and devise strategies how to do so. And the government has supported the police in producing a 6-point plan in which they have set out very clearly various strategies to combat these gun crimes, these violent crimes. But the police is only one of the stakeholders in the process by which we have to bring the crime under control. And so the criminal justice system that has a number of different components, this is what this board is meant to bring together, the various components, so that rather than the police being seen as being the sole responsible agent to deal with it, that other stakeholders, other components, other agencies in the criminal justice system will come together to work to reduce and improve, as it was, the not just the control of crime, but also the dispensing of criminal justice. I speak, and I could name some of them. When somebody commits a crime, the person, the agency that first interacts is the police. They investigate the crime, they may make arrest, they will deal with it, and maybe proffer, as it was, evidence and summons and indictment, which can go various ways, but generally then goes to the office of the DPP, who would be acting the prosecution to take that case to the High Court, for instance, to oversee some of what is happening in the Magistrates Court. And so they will actually be involved in, with the evidence that is before them, going to the court and prosecuting that case. The court may then sentence that person to jail. They may be acquitted, but if it goes to the prisons, then are part of the criminal justice system. You might have probation services and part of the criminal justice system, youth justice. So there are various components of it. The New Horizons, where our young offenders go, and so on. Social services. The whole gamut of different departments, agencies are involved in crime and dealing with criminal justice. And what we have done with the Criminal Justice Strategic Board is to bring all of these agencies together. We had just the launch and our first meeting, but as we go forward, we'll be developing, as it was, very measurable goals that we can say, for instance, just as an example, that the prison has some 60 people on remand. That's too many people being on remand. How can we improve that to reduce that number significantly? That people can have access to justice, can go before the court, be dealt with, and their matters be dispensed with in a timely manner, in a reasonable time. You know what I mean? How long does a matter take to be tried before you're being summoned, and so forth? So there are a number of different ways in which the board can measure and bring these matters under control. And so we expect that in that way, working together, rather than working in silos, with everybody doing their own thing, now we can have, as it was, an F-Court interlinked support for each other. And what happens, say, with the police can be supported by the DPP's office and the prisons. They all then will have these measures that we can now work to improve upon for the benefit of the society at large. So it's another support that we think a very critical support to work to deal with the societal problems in crime. So this is, for us, the establishment of this board has been a major effort on our part, and we would want to work very hard to ensure that the board does have the type of results over time that we hope that would lead to bring criminal justice system under better control than what it is right now.
This afternoon's guest is the Honorable Vincent Byron. He is the Minister with responsibility for communications, legal affairs, and justice. He's also the Attorney General. So, Attorney General, we left off speaking about the Criminal Justice Strategic Board. I'm sorry. Now, you are also the Minister of Communications. So, let's go there for a little bit, right? You are the chairman of ECTEL, the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Regulatory Body. Now, I want to ask you this afternoon, what are some of the challenges faced by the OECS in light of the recent merger between Cable and Wireless and Columbus Communications, forming what we now know in St. Kitts NEVIS as Flow?
Communications, and just generally, if I may speak about that first, portfolio, for me is a very exciting one, because it's one in which we can make a significant difference, make a paradigm shift in the way in which we use technology in our country. As Minister of Communication, responsibility for technology and telecommunications, I have responsibility for the National Telecommunications Regulatory Commission, NTRC. The NTRC grants licenses to service providers like Cable and Wireless now, Live Flow, others who function in the telecommunication space. They give licenses to Spectrum, the particular frequency that radio stations operate on, and they manage that type of stuff. The NTRC is part of the ECTEL regional body out based in St. Lucia, so that there are NTRCs in 5 of the 6 independent countries in the Eastern Caribbean in the OACS. All of the countries except Antigua have an NTRC. Antigua, however, is very much involved in the work of ECTEL, and hopefully next year they will be joining as a full-fledged member. So they attend our meetings and they're very much involved in what we do. So that the NTRCs, the national bodies, basically operate through the technical support from the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Regulatory Body Authority, ECTEL. Everyone would be aware that there have been this recent merger between Cable and Wireless and Columbus Communications. Cable and Wireless has been functioning as line. Columbus Communications has operated as flow. In St. Kitts and Nevis, we have never had flow before. On the other hand, in the southern windwards, Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, they have had both line and flow as the two major providers who have been in competition with each other. And so the market force of the competition between those, in and of itself, could lead to a certain regulatory thing. So open competition in those markets would have in the past been very helpful in maintaining a certain level of control. What has happened is that now that flow and line have merged in those countries, we now have monopolies that are of concern in those markets, so that questions of basic pricing structures, plans, could be affected, would be affected. So that has been a concern. In St. Kitts and Nevis, though, we have had line that has now rebranded as flow. So that market control, we did not have that concern here, because Digicel, on the other hand, acted as the buffer, the competing factor with line, now flow, as well as when it comes to questions of broadband. The cable has been the competitor with line, now flow in the broadband. So we are very concerned about that. In ECTEL, I now head, have termed the chairman as the minister, the Council of Ministers for ECTEL, the superior body for the authority, and I have taken on the chairmanship of that body. Our fundamental priority is that we can provide service for the people of the region, sub-region, consumers, basic service of good quality at affordable prices, affordable rates. That fundamentally is the thing that will create a market, level playing field for those who give service to our peoples to do so at good quality at affordable rates. There are a number of issues that affect us at this moment. One is roaming in the region, so that if you are in St. Kitts and you go to Antigua, you may pay additional charges or to windwards or whatever it is. And we're saying that this should be one space. You should have no roaming charges. There's a question of number portability. What does that mean? That people in St. Kitts walk over 2 phones. You have one for line flow, one for Digicel, a 66 number, a 76 number. We say that there should be number portability where you should just have one phone. There are questions of over-the-top services that are offered, OTT services, net neutrality, that you should not have to pay for certain of the services, WhatsApp and so on. So there are a number of issues that ECTEL NTRC through ECTEL have to have a regulatory body. There are issues that confront us. Do we have the proper legislative underpinning? Are the laws in our countries such that we can really fully implement some of these goals that we want to achieve? One of which is an electronics communication bill that has been drafted for a number of years but has not been carried to Parliament. And we hope that next year we will be able to have our members introduce that. That gives us a type of law in our countries, individual countries, to deal with these matters. So roughly, that is what we do from, in my capacity as chairman of ECTEL. There is a technical group in St. Lucia that advises us as ministers, and so that is what I do. But it really is one aspect that I do as Minister of Communications. In terms of Minister of Communication, say in St. NEVIS, for me, just as exciting, maybe even more exciting, is the work we do to make St. NEVIS a jurisdiction, a market in which, one, that every household is connected by broadband. I think it's important, it's critical priority that over the next 5 years, this term, that we have a policy, we have the policy that every household is connected by broadband. The real challenge for us as a society is that everyone has a smartphone. Everyone needs to be able to have services that are delivered. And so for me, it's perhaps my most exciting portfolio, because look, you go across to the electricity department and you have these long lines an hour to pay a telephone bill, electricity bill, a water bill. I would hope that sooner rather than later, and I'm talking about over the next year or so, next couple of years, you'll be able to pay your telephone bill from your home, from your phone. These are things that we have to do, offer basic government services, e-government services online, are things that this administration would want to have accomplished and implemented. We're not reinventing any wheel, we're not doing anything. These are plans that have been around for quite a while, but have never been implemented. You should be able to apply for a passport online, to renew your driver's license, you know what I mean? Apply for birth certificate and receive it. They need to make sure that government services, basic government services, are accessible, much more readily accessible through electronic means, digital means, is one of the ultimate accomplishments we would want to point back on over the next year, or next couple of years coming. The Ministry of Communications is one which I think will be delivering a lot of these functions in terms of within government. But we also have to take a lead as well, encouraging the market forces, young people to get involved in entrepreneurial activities, to be able to do their own businesses, web pages, to be able to do so many things, to create, as it was, a new market, and new opportunities to be able to not only to access the St. NEVIS market, but we live in a global world, and this is how, living here in St. NEVIS, we can be doing things that affect people globally. And so we have the ingenuity, we have the will. It is for us to provide, as it was, the support, the sort of market forces to allow us to do so. And so for me, it's a very exciting area of the work that I do.
And again, we see the vision of the Team Unity government coming out in your statement. Now, you mentioned Parliament in passing just now, and I wanted to speak a little bit about Parliament. Now, the last sitting of Parliament on November 17th saw a heated debate on this Stamp Amendment Bill 2015, which was subsequently passed. We also saw another important bill, the Small Estates Bill, Now, this received little or no debate. So tell us a little bit about what was happening in Parliament, and tell us how these bills would benefit the ordinary Kittitian and NEVIS.
Thank you. Part of my portfolio, as I mentioned, on the Ministry of Justice and Legal is also to ensure that legislative measures are prepared and brought to government, brought to Parliament on behalf of the people. And at the last sitting that you saw clearly mentioned, there were these 3 bills that had second and third reading that were passed into law. One was the incorporation of churches in order to do business need to actually get a statute legislation passed to allow them to do that for the Parliament. But the other 2 bills that were brought and had second and third readings were very, very important bills. The first one, the stamp duty bill, was one that was read back in December last year by the Douglas administration. It was in the budget for that year. And so it basically led to a process by which the payment of stamp duty, which is basically a tax on the sale and purchase of property, would have been equalized between 2 different rates. Generally across the board, people paid, well, vendors of property paid 12% on the value of the property. Before, up to 2009, it was a situation in which the seller paid 6%, the buyer paid 6%. But then that was equalized. And so the 2%, the 2 different payments were brought into, and only the seller paid 12% in 2009. What has happened? Because the government of the day wanted to encourage condominium development, condominiums could be sold with only a stamp duty of 5%. So whereas ordinary citizens here in St. Kitts and NEVIS would have to pay an additional amount to have real property, 12%. Condominiums, which generally targeted the tourist people from overseas, and in particular people within the citizenship by investment, to be able to qualify to get citizenship. There are a number of condominium projects that are already being constructed, and so the government then felt that it was achieving some of its objective, but there needed to be an equality in terms of what was paid. So that the bill, the amendment bill, was to reduce, bring down the stamp duty being paid for real estate, for property, by ordinary citizens down to 10%.
So it moved from 12
to 10. It was a reduction. The condominium payments would go from 5% to 10%. So it was a question to bring fairness to the to the question of real taxes on real property. That was what the bill was about. It engendered much debate in a whole range of other things, and degenerated into conduct that many people have characterized in a number of different ways, which I won't. But I think it's important to keep focus on what had happened. I think I should also mention a question that Dr. Douglas, leader of the opposition, asked me, and which I had to respond to, is why we only did it now in November, just a couple of weeks away, a few weeks away from having the budget, then we could introduce it again. And this is how I respond. I responded to him in Parliament, and I think I should again. What had happened is that when a measure is introduced during the budget debates and is passed, it goes into force immediately on the 1st of the month. It goes into force as it was in January the 1st. It began to go into force. But there is a law that says that you still have to go back to Parliament within 90 days to pass the measure for amendment in the law, for it to become permanent. That's the first issue. And what happened, the 90 days went, and it was not brought into law. So that lapsed. It was no longer part of the law. And so people who had actually paid their taxes asked back for their money, and it was refunded. And so Dr. Douglas's point was, why did you have to give that money? You're now running out of money, you come back with it. But there was a very specific reason why we did not go back to Parliament with it before. And it had to do with the state of the Citizenship by Investment program in St. Kitts and Nevis. And everybody would remember that last year, May 2014, the United States government, through their Inland Revenue, whatever it is, passed a FinCEN advisory against St. Kitts and Nevis. It is a very serious sanction against our country because they said that people who were accessing our citizenship program were illicit actors. They were illegal. And they were using our citizenship to defraud and commit things. They could not be trusted. And so the United States government put that sanction against St. Kitts and Nevis. It's a very serious sanction. It is one that's still in place. We remember that in the 22nd of November, some months later, the Canadian government then came and removed our access to Canada without a visa, the visa waiver for St. Kitts and Nevis. We lost that on November 22nd. Here were these two major partners, allies of ours, who were spanking us, but more than spanking. They were sanctioning us and telling us that you all have not been proper. You're not doing the right thing. When we came into office in February of this year, we found a letter from the Secretary of State to the last Prime Minister, Dr. Douglas, sanctioning him and St. Kitts and Nevis for the conduct of our CBA program. It was, for us, very, very serious that here was St. Kitts and Nevis with this program, which for many people had been the oldest and the best, was under the scrutiny of our international partners, the US, the Canadians, the British, and the European Union. And while this was hanging over our head, the CBI had to be properly redone. We had to go and recalibrate it. We had to go and work very hard to try and recover some confidence with our international partners. And so we spent a lot of time meeting with the Ambassador of the United States, the Canadian High Commission, the British High Commission, representatives from the EU, numerous meetings and meeting with them to give these people a sense of comfort that this new administration was determined to make sure that we did put in place a proper system. It was our first primary objective, our first priority. And I can happy to say that I think that we did some excellent work because we breathe with a sigh of relief that our partners see us in a much better light today than they did over the last year or so. I'll go further, because we held an international conference here in July at the OTI. We invited all of these people to come and speak. And the British High Commissioner, Victoria Dane, said at OTI a number of times in her presentation that Senator NEVIS needed to convince her, how to convince her minister not to pull the visa-free access to the UK. Suppose they say we need a visa to go to the United Kingdom. You know what that would do to us? Huh? It was very, very serious. And so Prime Minister Harris and we visited the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in London with that in mind. We went and had to speak to the Minister, Lord Swire, on this matter. It was something that we had to work very seriously on. While that is going on, it just didn't make sense to be talking about putting up the rates, putting up a stamp duty on the same factors that are on the economy. And I should also say, while that is happening as well, our local service providers, the people who are working assiduously to develop the Citizenship by Investment Program, were complaining because there had been a pullback on the processing of these applications. People all around the world were complaining that the program was not doing well. We had to strengthen the program. We have put in a lot more professional people. We have brought in people with immigration experience, financial experience, international finance, banking. We have strengthened the unit, and we have put in new software has been introduced, and now we can say that the operation has been working tremendously better. There's a lot more confidence coming from the service providers, from the developers, as how it is working. We feel that the program is back on track, and we are confident that it has regained its place as the leading program, especially in our region and worldwide. So that we are very confident with what has happened this year. Now that we're in this position, we can now give the benefits of the reduction in stamp duty for local people, while at the same time balancing off that loss of revenue with increasing it in terms of the condominium permit. So that for me was a very, very important piece of legislation. And the debate for me was very surprising that we did so much. But, Jamila, Jean, for me, equally as important, and maybe more important, was the small estates bill.
But that one was not discussed.
Well, I led it, and I did discuss it. I was seconded by the Prime Minister, who did discuss it. But surprisingly, nobody on the opposition benches even mentioned it. And when it's left for the public to wonder why. I was also a little surprised, though, that it did not appear in mainstream media. You know, what is the small estates bill, really? When someone dies, whatever you leave behind is part of your estate. So if you leave a house, you leave a car, you leave money in a bank. This is the estate of John Brown. And John Brown's estate needs a legal representative to be able to disburse, to distribute the estate assets that are left behind. So therefore somebody has a mother or father who passes away and the house is in the person's name. They just can't go to the bank and use it. They don't put a paper in it. You have to get legal documents appointing you as the representative. Now, there are two ways you can do it. People can prepare a will saying before they die, I would like to leave my house to my son so-and-so, or my so-so-so, whoever it is. So you probate the will to get that legal representative. If you die without a will, and it's called intestate, you then have to apply to the court. Someone has to apply to the court under the laws of intestacy, because there is an administrative law that says how it can be done. Through a lawyer, a number of documents. It can be an expensive process. Oath of this, affidavit of that, and so on. Can cost thousands of dollars to get an estate provided for. Suppose, for instance, and it does happen regularly, your mother and father passes away, and that $8,000 in National Bank, you have to go to a lawyer to get it probated and administrative papers done to it. It can be expensive and time-consuming, and for many people, it is very troubling. But there is a law. There was a law called the Small Estates Act, first enacted in 1944, that allows for people who have small estates, limited amount of value. So like in 1961 laws, it was at $240. But at that time, that might have been a lot of money. 1970s, it had been increased to $500. And then for a number of years, it was only $500. In 1985, in the Palm administration of the day, they went from $500 to $5,000. And $5,000 in 1985 might have seemed like a lot of money. But $5,000 30 years later ain't a lot of money. So that under the Labour administration, for the last 20 years, poor people were leaving their money in the bank. It is like just over $5,000. They can't get access to it. It don't make sense to go to a lawyer to pay them $1,000 to just get a couple $1,000. It was troublesome. The small estates took ordinary people who don't have a whole lot of money in the bank, who might have a car valued more than $5,000. The car might walk down there because you can't get registered. You don't have the papers for it.
And you don't have the money to
You don't have the money to pay the lawyer. Okay? So what this bill does was to increase the limit for which is a small estate from $5,000 to $25,000. Okay? And what do you do if you have something that's valued less than $25,000? You can go to the court office, in the courthouse, and fill out a one-page form and pay $10 to become the legal representative of that estate, to get access to someone who has left something for you. Let me give you an example. We have had a situation over the last few months where the Sugar Workers Restoration Fund, people have died and received awards, $7,000, $8,000. But I can't pass it on. The people can't get it because they're not the legal representative of the estate. And there have been lawyers who have volunteered, a couple of them have volunteered, to do the process, time consuming and awkward. And that all it needs is a form now to fill out to be able to access that money. $10. And it is, for me, a bill that is going to be very, very important to a lot of ordinary people around St. Kitts and NEVIS to be able to access the inheritance from their father, their brother, their sister going forward. And I say it's very unfortunate that I've been somewhat taken aback that nobody has been discussing this and saying how critical and important it is to our people in St. Kitts and Nevis. And for me, it's something that I think as Team Unity, we are proud about this bill, working for you. Because this is one thing that could affect ordinary poor people in a very meaningful way. Yeah.
Well, Minister, the conversation is very interesting, and I'm sure that our listeners want a chance to get in on the conversation. So at this time, we open the lines, and I advise you that the numbers to call in are 465-2555. That's 465 2555. If you are overseas and you want to call in as well, you can call at 718-577-2916. That's 718-577-2916. And we have a caller on the line. Good afternoon. Welcome to Working For You.
Good afternoon to your host, and good afternoon to the Honorable Sir Vincent Byron, Attorney General.
Good afternoon.
And audience out there.
Good afternoon.
I just want to congratulate you on this appointment as the Attorney General in terms of having to be the one who fights to remove the other one, who, along with the one before him, would have never done the job what you are doing right now in terms of trying to repair and reverse the damage that was done by both of them. And I have to commend you because you did give an overall review in terms of how things have been happening in terms of the incent and the other different areas where the country reputation was damaged, and where you all had to go and speak with these different powerful countries in the world, whether the Euro, the English, or the Canadians, and try to have these things rectified, because it's very, 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 very hard when they're going to have to make a decision and implement the business fee and also consider implementing other sanctions against us. So I want to thank you for that, dear. But you spoke about something there where definitely I don't think will fit well with me particular. And that come back to the point where we speak about the people who were there before and the connection in terms of family and the politics and that kind of radio. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Not quite.
Not quite, meaning that you spoke about in terms of not victimizing people and repositioning people and not that kind of way, but you talk about the connection between that kind of radio, where the team unity have to be in a way that it doesn't prove to be looking at like victimizing people.
Yes.
That labor people, PAM people are CCM people.
Yes.
But at the same time, let me look at it like this, Honorable, because it's important. I'm not speaking for myself only, I'm speaking on behalf of other people, because they might have felt that unity is failing them or victimizing them by allowing people who were there prior to the past election, who didn't like them, but now is in the same position where they have to go and deal with them. Do you think that is something where the people who supported Team Unity will be able to live with in terms of going forward, or do you think Team Unity will have to revisit that position when you speak about this afternoon?
Yeah.
It's important that you actually look at it like that, because at the same time, the government had certain issues where they have with the past government, and your office is the legal department where you have to take up certain issues, and at the same time, you have certain lawyers and certain people who are there under the past government. You feel confident in giving them a case against the past government in terms of dealing with, or you think that that is something where blowing up the process? Have a good day.
Okay, Carl, I want to thank you for raising that concern, and the Attorney General will speak to it.
Thank you very much for that question. I think it's a very critical question, because it is one that I'm confronted with on a regular basis, where supporters of unity feel that this government has not been aggressive enough in bringing, and as it was, some of them speak about locking up people, and I would want to respond like this. The Team Unity movement, this is how I introduced it, and I stand by it, campaigned for 26 months that they would conduct themselves differently from what had pertained before. And I don't want to belabor the point, but I should mention what I mean by that. There are a lot of people who were denied a proper and a fair chance when Labour was in power. Some people were terminated. Some people did not get the proper opportunity to advance. in the public service. They were marginalized, and therefore there was a lot of frustration by our people. And when I say our people, I'm talking generally by our people. I think that there is genuine concern that there are a number of people who were quote-unquote political under the Douglas administration who continue to function in the public service and who, by extension, should now be marginalized, or for that matter, repositioned, is the term he used, a very good word, or even dismissed. And I say, for me, this is not what we campaigned about. I'm very clear in my mind on that, because we appealed, our message appealed, not just to PAM people, or quote-unquote unity people. It appealed to the country. And a number of people who supported the Labour administration voted for the Team Unity movement because they felt that this administration, our administration, would issue in to St. Kitts and Nevis a new day. That the atmosphere would be different. That it would capture, as it was, the type of country in which we can live in, be friends, and openly interact with people despite of your political views. It is what some people refer to as political tribalism. I'm Labour, I look out for Labour and forget those. I'm Unity, gave it a Labour, only Unity people. And we're just going from one pole to the other pole. I genuinely believe that this is not what this country should be about. And we can only lift it if it is that we are willing to embrace the people, all of our people. Now, it does not mean that there won't be those who still support Labour. And we hear a number of negative comments on other programs that are constant. The irk, they get behind people. And people tend to feel, boy, when they're banging them out, like you have to do them something. I have a different view. Because when I hear about, I don't have time to listen to it, when I hear about what is being said by certain members in Parliament, for instance, or on radio stations, for me, it only solidifies why it is that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis voted Labour out of office. That's why they voted them out. But do they want another government to act in the same way against Labour people? I don't think that's what the country wants. We have to be very, very careful that we have to take our time and evolve a new culture in this country. A new culture. It's going to be difficult because people have taken 20 years to be acculturated, for it to be ingrained in them. And it's not going to take 9 months to get it out of our system as a country. It might not take a year, it might not even take 5 years, but we have to work every day to make sure that we as a people can appreciate when somebody does their work. You support Labour? That's fine. Do your work. If you don't do your work, the normal practices in any business is, they'll see you later. We sanction you. But not because I'm Labour, therefore do me something. I don't think so. This is not what we campaigned about. This is not what this country needs. No. At the same time, I'm hearing in that question the fact that there have been a number of things that we claimed while in opposition were wrong, maybe illegal. And it is our duty now to properly investigate those. Properly investigate them. It may need accounting investigations, forensic accounting. And once we get the evidence that wrongdoing was done, the law must prevail. That has to be the process. Not that we say, we're going to do you something and then look for it afterwards. I am being confronted. One of the issues that I've inherited is, as Attorney General, is that the previous administration, dealing with the issue of crime, did certain things to some of our citizens. Whether they're bad, whatever it is. People were locked up, some for 2-3 years. We get to the courthouse door, and the matters were withdrawn for lack of evidence, nolly-crossed. Those are coming home to roost now. That is not justice. We live in a country where we say we adhere to the rule of law and the administration of justice. And we must believe that everyone must have their fair opportunity to prove their innocence under the law. And we cannot break the law or anything like that. If and when we do find the evidence, these individuals will be taken before the courts and the law will deal with them properly. No one is going to escape that. But it can't all happen in 9 months. If it has not happened yet, it doesn't mean it's not going to happen. It does not mean it's not going to happen. But we will be investigating a number of infractions that we see, whether it is some of the programs under the SIDF, like SAFE and so on. We will be investigating them properly. They'll be investigated forensically, and when we find whatever there is to be found, these matters will be placed before the Director of Public Prosecutions in the rise to a criminal level, or if not, if it's a civil matter, we will deal with them. We will deal with them. But to say that we are not using that to go out to do something to people, justice is not about revenge and vengefulness. Cannot be, because that is not the type of country we need and want. Team unity was to issue in something new, a breath of fresh air in this country, and we have to keep it that way.
A fresh start. And we have another caller on the line. Good afternoon, caller. You're live.
Good afternoon, hostess and Senator Byron.
Good afternoon.
Hostess, please let me have just a short moment to ask 2 questions, and if I get the answers very directly, I'll be quickly off the phone, so please let me hold on. Now, Senator Byron, I am glad that you spoke about the small property, but the government at Parliament couldn't go any higher than 25,000. What is the property worth much more? And I'll hold on because I have one more question for you.
That is a determination, thank you, that is a determination that was made by the government that a small estate in 2015 would be a value of $25,000. If it is, for instance, that someone has property or assets worth more than that, we think that you should be able to get legal assistance that can cover that. Basically, that's what it is. At the moment, when it was 5,000, if you wanted that, you had to go to a lawyer. That is why we have lawyers in the country, and this is not a means to, in any way, cut out lawyers of work, but they are trained to assist clients to understand and interpret the law and carry out certain practices that the ordinary citizen who may not be trained in it can get assistance. And it's a determination that was made. If you look at the way in which previously, before 1985, the laws, the values had been increased, they went up at very small increments. This year is a significant increment from 5,000 to 25,000. And we feel that for people who have relatively low value assets, 25,000 is a significant increase and benefiting ordinary poor people.
Okay, Carla.
No, Senator Byron, you talk a lot about freedom of information.
Yes.
And I want to know how far does freedom of information go, because the former DPP, I would like you to tell me how much money that he received and why the matter was shut down, that the public who wanted to know how much it was does not know, because it was very much in the public domain that the case had gone to court. And
yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for that question as well. The Freedom of Information Bill that has been tabled has only had a first reading. And because it is so important to our governance agenda, we feel that the people must understand exactly the scope, the limits to which freedom of information can be used, this bill can be used. It is going to be a cost, for instance, and I'll come back to that. I'll just say that in the new year, we are scheduling a series of public lectures, town hall meetings to discuss these governance bills, that people can come and ask these questions and have the benefit of counsel and others to explain and put their points of view as to the scope of the freedom of information. Let me give you an example. I speak about cost. If it is that you go to a government department and ask for a particular piece of information, the government departments have to be in a position to provide that, because this law will carry a sanction if it does not. So it has to deal with the preparation of government to be able to provide the data, and also exactly what all you can ask for. I mentioned the companion bill to it, the data protection bill that deals with privacy. For instance, should you be able to go and ask what teacher so-and-so is making? Should you be able to go and ask about people's personal business in government? Because it's freedom of information. So there are limits to these things in terms of our democratic rights. Now, as far as the matter with Mr. Sinanan is case, and the question about information, freedom of information, what I would say is this, that Mr. Sinanan filed a case in court. That is a public document. And any journalist, any citizen could have gone to the court and had access to what Mr. Sinanan was asking for. In his claim, Mr. Sinanan said how much he worked for. His contract was filed. In the court case also was a response from the Attorney General in the case explaining it. No one, as far as I know, has said that they saw the documents. These were public documents. You don't need a Freedom of Information bill for that. All he needed was a 5-cent stamp, $5 stamp, to get access to the file, to see what he asked for. I'll tell you what he asked for. Mr. Sinanan, despite the fact that there is a gag order on the order that the court had by consent, I can tell you what the public document said. Mr. Sinanan said that he was 57 years old, or the DPP should not be there after 55. He said that his interpretation of the bill was that he could work to 60. He wanted 3 more years. Okay? Now, his contract that he provided to the court said that he made $120,000 a year. That's public. So 3 times 120,000 is 360,000. I can't go further than that. You draw the conclusion. Did the government, how much the government pay? When we say he had no case, okay? We say he had no case. Okay. But there was a reason, which we said, why we were prepared to get it off the books as quickly as possible. On the 21st of September, the case was in court. The September assizes began on the 22nd of September. There were 50 cases pending, 32 traversed from last May. The criminal justice system, should we hold up that to fight Mr. Sinanan when he could go to the Court of Appeal, to the Privy Council? Should we hold the people of St. Kitts and Nevis ransom, trying to manage Mr. Sinanan totally? Or is it more important to have people who are locked up in jail, waiting trial for months, sometimes years, so that we can satisfy the fact that Mr. Sinanan had no case. A determination had to be made by the people who are in the government whether it was important to get rid of the case quickly so that we could have had the September assizes. If it is more important to know how much money he get, we know he can't get more than 360 using the extrapolation, which at least I think that those who have been following the case should have been able to tell you. I hear they say he gets 5 million and 2 million and have documents. Utterly ridiculous. And the whole speculation to me was something that was just mind-boggling, because this was a very straightforward matter. And I do think it was settled in the best interests of Senkits and NEVIS and dealt with. Just one last thing on the question. There were a number of matters that were in the court this year that have been settled. Some of them are very public. Some dealt with freedom of FM radio. I don't know what was paid. The public does not know what was paid. They dealt with high-profile political figures. But it was settled without it being revealed to the public.
Senator Byron, you would agree with this, that citizens have a right to ask a question, though?
Sure, you have a right. No, not at all.
In the answer?
Not at all. And you don't have to agree with my answer either. But I would say we had to make a judgment as to what was the most important factor. Should we get rid of this matter quickly in the best interest of the criminal justice system? It was urgent, and we had to dispose of it.
Okay, caller, I want to thank you, but we do have other callers on the line, so let's take another call. Good afternoon. You are live on Working For You.
Hello, Mr. Byron.
Hi, good day.
Yeah, good afternoon. You know, one of the problems let people have with the behavior in the house,
yes,
which is, I must say, is very deplorable.
Yes.
Is that ordinary people cannot understand the laws that are being laid down in the house. They cannot follow what is going on in the house because of the load of confusion. Every minute somebody rising on a point of disruption.
Yes.
People cannot follow the laws, and most of them apply to the ordinary poor people, ordinary lay people.
Yes.
Right. One of the things I want you to clear up for me is the last law you were talking about there when somebody leave the estate,
yes,
intestate.
Yes.
Now, suppose the person had a plural amount of offspring.
Yes.
Would the same documents you could get could be applicable if the estate could be dividable?
Yes.
I want to know. For suppose okay, then one was to get the bank account, another one was to get a car, another one to get a piece of land, one a house. How would you deal with it? Explain it for us.
Well, we don't have enough time today.
Okay, cool.
But it's a very good question. It's a very good question. And the Intestates Act that normally would go through the normal process where a lawyer would have to file has laid out in statute very clear precedents of who gets what. Your wife, the spouse or husband, would normally get 10% absolutely of whatever is left behind. Your children, and she would also get half of whatever is remaining, so 45% of the 90%, she would have what is called a life interest in the rest of the estate. The children, if there are any, get 45%, the other 45% absolutely to be divided among themselves. So there is a clear list of people in terms of priority that are set out in our Intestacy Act. That is the basis outside of our will, which is very clear. This form, I agree with you, sets out that someone can go and make an application, and the registrar of the High Court should be able to do a due diligence to find out if there are other beneficiaries. Okay, it's normally done in a way, so you can have that. Now, we'd have to take time to explain what are the processes that would happen within the court system. But then it comes down to the registrar, who normally has to, anyway, grant the orders, whether it's going to be letters of administration for a normal process or something of this nature, to provide the representative to question, to make these questions and act upon them. And I agree with you, it's something that can be vexing. When people pass away, siblings tend to squabble among themselves. They squabble with the spouse and that type of stuff. Where there's no spouse or there are no siblings, it can be the parents, or it may be an aunt or whoever it is. But there is, as I say, the letters of administration, they grant the Intestacy Act that states what it is. And this Small Estates Act would then have to be dealt with within the registrar, within that scope of it. So I don't think we have enough time for me to explain it, but I agree with you, it's something that needs to be further explained so that the citizen can understand what their rights are.
Okay, we're going to take one more quick call. Good afternoon, you are live on Working For You.
Good afternoon, Jamila, and good afternoon to the AG as well, AG Byron. Rusty Liver there. My question is relating to something that the AG mentioned earlier, Clark, about e-government, and that's fall under his portfolio. I want him to, if he can be a little bit more specific and detailed in his answers to me, in terms of how urgent it is for the government. Is there anything being done at this point in time in terms of seeing what can be done or what needs to be done? As he rightly said, it's not, you don't have to reinvent anything. Everything is in place. It's just, in my mind, it's just a matter of adopting what is out there to suit our purpose. So I'd like to know if anything is being done at this point in time, and how soon would somebody like me, who wants to benefit from such a program, doing some work with government as I'm doing right now, would be able to do so. Thanks, I'll listen off here.
Thank you very much for that question, and we need another hour. Thank you, Wesley. One of the first things that I would say is that we have set aside $1.3 million to refurbish and bring back online the Information Computer Technology Unit, ICTU building at the CFP Southwell industrial site. This was a building that housed the Department of Technology and did training and certification for private and public sector workers. It also housed an innovation center, but it was closed down since 2012. And for the past 3 years, the Department of Technology has been broken up, and it's part of it in the cable building, part of it in another building elsewhere. We now bring them together again, hopefully in January of this year. We would have the opening of this building, and it is going to be very exciting in that we will have incubator space for small business to come and to be involved there. It will be doing training for the private sector as well as public sector workers in learning various software applications, certification in Microsoft and other things. It allows for young people to the Innovation Center to develop apps and other things. It is going to be one of the key planks as we move forward to reactivate, as it was, the work within the public and private sectors in this area. At the ICTU Center, we will have IXP, Internet Exchange Point, where we will be joining, as it was, the cables connecting our broadband suppliers that will be able to afford us the ability to have better control of our KN designation, and so that whereas currently you may be in one room in your house and you have send an email to somebody in another room, it goes out somewhere in North America, that now will stay on an island in the country. And there will be another number of innovations that will be happening in this ICTU Center. That is a major one for us. We have also been engaging in public-private partnerships, and one of the things we will be rolling out within the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, is where we will be unveiling through our technology a new rebranding of St. Kitts and Nevis. We will be consolidating the various portals of which the government has responsibility for. The government and St. Kitts and Nevis will now have a new portal where you go to get access to the various ministries throughout St. Kitts at this point in time. We'll be adding NEVIS at some point, hopefully in the future, near future. But all the various web pages that are there will now come through one portal that has been invented. It's very exciting, where we've done video and still photos. It's going to be like nothing else anywhere in the region and nowhere in the world, because we are embarking on a nation-building rebranding program framework that we have spent quite a bit of time in putting together, and where we would have not just in the public sector but private partnerships as well to help us roll out as one of these. One of our private partners will be unveiling within shortly the SKN Academy, where we'll be doing complementary work with the ICTU Center, where we do other types of incubation and other types of support matters, so that young people, other people in this country, can now get involved in entrepreneurial activity in this very critical area of information and computer technology, developing applications and so forth. We see this area as being critical, as a new area for us to be opening up St. Kitts and Nevis for development, to excite young people. We have widespread penetration in terms of the use of technology. Everybody, nearly everybody that is, has a smartphone or cell phone. We know how to manipulate it, how to use it. I mentioned earlier in terms of the offerings of e-government services and using your phones to do these services, your laptops at home, to be able to deliver, as it was, to broadband technologies, things at home, security issues, and it can go on and on. I don't have a whole lot of time, but we could have a whole program on this. And it is a very, very exciting period for us. I would say that within government, we have put to cabinet the reorganization of the Department of Technology. We have put to cabinet the need to develop a national ICT governance board that would assist us to move these practices forward. We would be engaging more and more the public, and as I say, we have service providers who at this point are very much engaged in unveiling and investing in our country as to make us as one of the leaders in terms of broadband technology and services that can be delivered in our country. Just one last thing. Our young people know what downloading is, and many of them have begun uploading. And it is an area where we need to be able to encourage the development of all forms of production, whether it is in music, whether it is in photography, in inventiveness, in designs, whatever it is. We can supply our local markets in so many different ways, but we can also, as it was, become part of that global economy where we become open to everybody. And I think it's something that's very, very encouraging as we move forward.
And as you mentioned, we end on an exciting note. Yes, we are out of time, basically. Yes. Yeah. So, in closing, I want to again thank you, the Honorable Attorney General Vincent Byron, for being our guest today. Thank you so much for the work that you have done for justice, fairness, and transparency. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of Working for You, your Team Unity Government interactive radio program. I am Jamiela MacPhail, sitting in for Leslie Williams, who is on assignment.
Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Roy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.